But when you don't have it ventilated properly, especially with shingles, your shingles will literally boil and they get blisters on them, is what they call them. Recently, someone asked me, why does attic insulation matter so much? And the reason is that heat and cool moves through your house. And so in the summer, especially in Texas, the heat comes from outside and comes into the house. So that insulation acts as a barrier to keep that heat from coming into the interior of your house so that your air conditioning bill doesn't go up. That's in the summer. And in the winter, you want to keep that heat inside the house so you don't lose it. So again, kind of the opposite effect, but that insulation acts as a barrier so that your heat can't escape your house. There's different kinds of attic insulation. Old school is that we always use bat, and that's hardly used at all anymore, but the bats we laid up in the attic on the floor or under the floor if you had a floor. And then they went to spray insulation, and there was a period of, I remember removing when I was a kid, my parents called it cellulose, I think, which is fat, cellulite. Anyway, fluffy insulation up in your attic, and that was a lot cheaper and a lot messier. It hurts when it goes in your lungs. That is in a lot of attics today. There's also spray foam that is more of a recent thing, but where they're actually, instead of laying it in the floor of your attic, they lay it against the top of the attic, which is, that stuff is amazing as far as ventilation goes, because then you don't even have to ventilate your roof because you've moved that barrier from the floor of your attic up into the top, so it stops it up there. So when you do the spray foam insulation on the underside of the roof, you've moved your barrier, and so the heat comes in from the Texas sun or whoever, the sun, and it's not going to heat that attic space now so much because you've moved that barrier up. So your attic stays cooler and your cooling system doesn't have to work so hard to keep up. So when you have it on the floor, that works too. It keeps the interior of your house cooler and acts as a barrier there, but now your attic is hot. And when your attic is hot, especially if it's not properly ventilated, that's why you have to ventilate it, to keep that air moving, to get the air out of the attic and bring cooler air in. But when you don't have it ventilated properly, especially with shingles, what happens is the sun bakes the roof from the top. Now your attic is cooking it from the bottom, and your shingles will literally boil and they get blisters on them, is what they call them. And those blisters pucker up and then they'll blow, they explode. And then what that does is removes the grit from your shingles prematurely. And if you ever see, you've probably seen it driving around, there's shingle roofs where all the grit is gone and they're just shiny, and the tar and asphalt underneath the grit has been exposed to UV light. The UV light breaks down that tar and asphalt, which is what keeps the water out. And now what you're looking at, what's shiny, is just a fiberglass mat that is not waterproof that holds the shingle together. And so that, if you want your shingles to last as long as the manufacturer says they're supposed to last, then you're going to want to make sure that they don't get that hot from the underside. The other thing I was going to say about spray foam insulation, everything in life has pros and cons, right? The bad thing about that spray foam insulation is that if you do have a leak, the water gets trapped in between the insulation and your roof deck, and it runs, as water does, it runs downhill. And so you might not see it for ages. It might not come out. It might get absorbed by the insulation. It might have mold, which everybody hates that word. And if it does come out and you see the water, it might be coming out very far away from where the actual leak is. And so as a roofer, it becomes very hard for me to diagnose where that leak is sometimes. We just did a house recently, $1 million house, maybe $2 million house, beautiful house. And it had spray foam insulation, and the roof insulation was super bad, the initial one. And there were leaks everywhere and rotten decking. And until we tore it off, we knew it was bad, but when we tore it off, it was really bad. So we had to do a lot of repair work. And that's why insulation matters for the preservation of your roof.